it's like 6 or 7 per race. Right. And the funny thing that it's not and it's supposed to be better. Otherwise, it's all good. Oh, so people have it's just great. So it's out. It's out. Right. It's out that. So how do you pay your but generally, it says she doesn't drink. It's like, working out. Super specific. Bad. Yeah, that's the so like that, for reading. It's like, for instance, I know that's easier. Yeah. Figure. Right. Sure. Great. And so making sure that 3 minutes. And just not prefer of that. One thing you want to yeah. Yeah, in fact, they take the fence, No, just this. That makes a big settings. Right. Yeah, right. Ball, yes, develop dust. And I've had worked in an office, portable thing, but portable was a stretch. It's like a sewing. It wasn't saying it's really fledging. We could move it. Sir. Listen, people. And we got bigger. No word comes. Like after 10 seconds. No, it's and I don't. Like the bond, I think one thing that I want to do. Yeah, well, I'm down on it. But do the answer of the art. See, I'll stay explain. I'm sorry. There's a thing there. My always need to do things. Branch here. Forward there I can check. Oh yes. Read the fire here. From here. For here. Yeah, works both. Yeah. It's very clear. But read this up. It's a public here. I can give a many needs. Oh, I got this little 50 bag.
I guess there's some could be anything. I want to take that. That's you never know. Like your lives are there may be, you know, afterwards. Yeah. Yeah. I need to. This is I think that's it. Did you see the picture? Right 13. And I went to this restaurant in Hershey. So new one, well, been a while since I've been. See the sweet dogs, sweet real nice place. I always see some guys. Version, you think I yeah, that I think it's a right. Now, again, staff, now, horrible, horrible. It could be any word. This is, I like this thing. I get there, it's all from great, but there was this. It's also actually not a way to see it. Yeah. Yeah, this is as long as it's not dark and you can get some features on them. Once it starts getting a little bit dark, there's no smell everything. Smells anything. I just did that. Oh yeah, that's why. Because there is this. The answer was really. Yeah, really true. That's how big it is.
How is the sound now? You're only hearing background noise. You said 15 minutes, sorry. Well, we made a stretch, I'll stretch. Never had a problem with OVH, right? Like I can talk at any subject at any length for without any preparation. Oh my God, I used the word bloviate. The horror. Exactly. Exactly. Such is life. Yeah. Key thing.
You got your presentation, you got the clickers. Mike.
Start those ends, spread those ends stuff.
Stop the gets spoken. That's easy. I figure out. This goes like into so anyway, Parkinson, so what this is right? And you can see it here. So like since he's been better. Right. Stop it. Way out. That Somebody got the, oh, but.
You do that. We need to get a room observatory. Yeah.
He's three hours, it should. Here's my notes, me, didn't tell you, I mean, it's a 1 day, but it's 3 weeks. 3 LEDs. Back 3 years ago, 8 years ago, it's over. You know, brass road. Yeah, that house is probably signs they were doing the agent or something or there are issues.
It's not, it's not site stuff, but it's all simple because that's the only thing is to know that, right? I'm saying.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm Jan Rush, president of DVAA. And I appreciate, we've got a great crowd tonight. Thanks a lot. So want to share this wonderful photo from Tom Nolasco of the sun. Sun's been very active, as you know, so that would be a fun way to start out. I'm not. This isn't active, so. Okay. Battery dead. All right, well, while we do the battery chain. So I'm sure some of you have been in the same position that I've been now and then, and that's that there'll be a supernova explosion and we hear about it at the last minute. And by the time we figure out where it is, it's gone. Yeah. So this time, what I'm going to talk about is getting ready for a recurring nova. So it's not a supernova, it's a recurring nova. This information from Sky and Telescope this month. So their opening line is, what could be the brightest nova of your lifetime will flare in the next few months? Novae arise from tightly orbiting binary stars in which a normal star orbits a white dwarf, and gas from the companion star accretes onto the surface of the white dwarf. And when the accumulated matter has piled deep enough, the temperature at the base of the accreted layer rises sufficiently to reach the kindling temperature of hydrogen, and then there's a runaway thermonuclear reaction. And so the interesting thing about these stars is that the nova are recurring, and this particular one that's going to be upcoming is T Corona Borealis. So the star is called T, is named T. It's in the constellation Corona Borealis, and it was documented as far back as 1217. So this is one of only, I think, 10 stars in the Milky Way where we know the recurring period, and it's an 80-year recurring period. But of course, how closely can you really predict that? Well, the brightening begins, and if you follow the light curve of this thing, the brightening begins about 11 years before the eruption, and then there's a pre-eruption dip in brightness. And they did observe this dip in March of 2023. So this event is upon us. The predicted time the outburst will occur is between January and September this year. I know that's a big window, but it's better than we usually get. You don't get any notice before a supernova explosion. And so that we can catch it, the AAVSO is observing every 12 minutes around the clock and around the globe. So when it happens, we will know. It's predicted to reach second magnitude. So that's the same brightness as Polaris and Mizar stars, which I'm sure you know. So that'll definitely be naked eye. And that'll be at the peak, and it'll be at the peak for about a week. So I'm going to talk about how to find it and how you can be one of the people to observe it. Okay, first of all, the constellation Corona Borealis, the easiest way to find it is find the Big Dipper, follow the handle to Arcturus. Everybody knows about Arcturus. Then you see the constellation Boötes, and right over here is Corona Borealis. And this brightest star here is called Alphecca. And here's, of course, you don't have the lines in the sky to help you. So here's how it looks actually in the sky. There's Arcturus. Here's constellation Boötes.
Somebody could turn on the lights a bit.
Oh, yeah. Could we get the light? Sorry.
Brian usually does that for us.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't make them dark enough. Sorry. So here we have Arcturus. Here's the constellation Boötes. It looks like a kite. And then here's the smile that is Corona Borealis. Now, what about the recurring nova? Where do you look for that? Well, here's Corona Borealis. Here's the brightest star, Alphecca. And the T star that's going to, that's the nova, is right here. And here's a nice simulation. This is the bright star that's going to appear. So if you go out and look to get ready for this event, I urge you to go out, make sure you can find Corona Borealis, see this here, and find Alphecca. And then when this star appears, or when the recurring nova appears, there's where it'll be. And this is what it'll look like. So don't say you weren't warned. Okay, now about some things that are happening in the club. First thing I wanted to mention is that we're very excited that this month on the 29th of February, we are going to be visiting the Malin Auditorium and, Malin Planetarium. The Malin Planetarium, if any of you have not been there, is in the Arcola Intermediate School. It's part of the Methacton School District, but the director of the planetarium, Adam Chantry, is a DVAA member, and he makes it available to us for free, a show that's just for us. He starts out with a little bit of what's up in the sky right now. And then we go to a star presentation, and this time it's going to be on Faster Than Light, which is about shows a virtual ride aboard spacecraft of the future. So this time is extra special because they've done a complete renovation of the whole planetarium. They rebuilt the dome. They have new projection equipment and brand new seats, and it's all new. So this is something that anyone in the family would like. Be happy to bring grandkids. And this is recommended for fourth grade and up because it's a little bit, gets a little technical a little bit. Please, we have registration online for this, and it's, I think we have like 40 of the 60 seats maybe filled, something like that. So register if you'd like to go. Okay. And these are the upcoming events. You can see outreach season is heating up. Starting off with March 12th, we have Space Night at the Erdenheim Elementary School. We have a few people signed up for that, but we could use a few more people to either set up telescopes for the kids to see outdoors or to help with running one of the indoor exhibits. The indoor exhibits. And some of these are just craft projects that you supervise the kids doing. So it's really easy. You don't have to know any astronomy. Just be there to explain to them, what a constellation is and that kind of thing. And if you'd like to do that, notify Ken Keplinger. He's in charge of that activity. On March 20th, we have a star party at Anderson Farm Park in Collegeville. And we do have some people lined up, but we could use a few more telescope operators, and Stan Williams is coordinating that. Then we have a March 20th public meeting.
I thought that was the 23rd.
I'm forgetting what that even is. What's that? Oh, I know, that's the Green Lane public meeting. Yes. So, I'm going to talk a little bit later about Green Lane, but, the last meeting for public content or, comment is March 20th. And the location is not yet determined. But sorry, I had a little lapse on there. On the 29th, we have the Star Party at Tyler Arboretum. Again, we have some telescope operators lined up, but that would be good to get a few more. And on the April 8th, we're going to do a local event on the partial solar eclipse, and Alan Purdy is leading that. We have, he'll be there with his solar telescope, but I think he could use a little bit more help because he might get a lot of people. So if you're going to be in town, and you'd like to help out with that event, please contact Al. It's not at our usual location in Valley Forge at the Model Airplane Center. It's being held in front of the Visitor Center, so everyone can find it easily. Okay, indoor clinics. We have 2 left. March 2nd, there's a clinic for beginner and intermediate astrophotography. And that'll be led by Tom, Gary, Joe, and John. And it was a really popular clinic last year. That's why we're repeating the same one. If you'd like to know how to get into astrophotography, come out to that clinic. And you can, they're going to cover a lot of different topics. Wide field, planetary, and deep sky. And you don't have to stay for all those topics. You can just come for the part that you're most interested in. And if you have any questions, Tom is here, John is here, Gary is here. So grab one of them and and ask your question. On March 16th, we have Gary Trapezzano is leading a clinic on Sky Safari Plus. And this is a great observing tool. If you already use it, you can get some good pointers to make it easier to use. And if you don't use it at all, and you want to find out what it's all about, come to the clinic. For the 16th? Yeah, I think it says 8 people on there, but we always get the number we need, so I think it'll be a go.
Charge double the tuition.
Right, these are all free, by the way. The clinics are members only, but they're free. Oh, I should mention, registration is required because we want to make sure we have sufficient materials for you and sufficient instructors. And they're held right here in this room on Saturday afternoons. And it is the last call for the DVAA Youth Awards. So you'll recall that this is our 2nd year when we've offered awards to youth that submit research projects. They're cash awards for elementary and for high school. So elementary, junior high school, and high school are all invited to make submissions. And the judging criteria are here: scientific methods, clear and focused purpose and hypothesis, all the stuff that your science teacher tells you. Submissions are due electronically before May 1st. And you send them to youthawards@dvaa.org. And here's where you can find all the information you need about these awards. At our website, there's a button that says Youth Awards Program. Just click on that and it'll give you everything you need to know. You don't have to be a member to submit an award. Your grandkids are eligible, your kids are eligible, your students are eligible. So we hope we have some good research this year. We certainly had some good research last year. Okay, coming up is our winter and spring camping trips. Bill McGeeney's under the weather today, so I'm presenting for him about these trips. Now, I'm starting out here with the comfy bed because those of you who have been to Cherry Springs know that there isn't usually a comfy bed involved. But we've rented the lodge and there is a comfy bed involved for you. Here's the porch of the lodge. So you walk right out the porch and there's the observing field. Super convenient, and you can run in and get warm anytime you like. And here's the nice room where you can sit and review your photos with your buddies. And the winter trip is March 7 to 10. I wasn't emphasizing that because it was full, but I hear there is one spot now. Somebody's dropped out, so there is one spot available, and there's a wait list. And then we have another trip where there are more spots, May 9 through 12.
People.
10, or no, 15, I think I think it's 15 for this one, and it was 6 maybe for this one, something like, we have 2 lodges for the May trip.
Where are they in relation to the park?
Yeah, they're less than a mile away from the park. I didn't bring my picture of that, but there are some pictures on the if you click on the event, I think there's a picture of the location of the field relative to Cherry Park. Or Cherry Springs. It's very, very close.
That's not fully.
What? Great Bear or whatever, several astronomical names having go on that.
Oh, okay. Well, this is the one we rented for March is called the Big Dipper, and then
Yes.
and then the other one we've rented is we have the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper, and they're across the street from each other. So the May trip has room for people in both lodges.
And Bill says, just hope for clear skies.
And hope for clear skies. Yes, we rented for 3 nights, hoping that maybe we get 2 out of those. So when you pay your fee, your $115, you pick any one of those 3 nights, all 3 or one of them, whatever. That's how we have to do it, because we have to be booking it ahead of time. Okay, now I promised some information on Green Lane. So the draft master plan has now been published. Those of you who are following this saga, Green Lane is a place where we like to go to observe. It's pretty dark, it's close. And so we do a lot of observing there as a group. And when the first plan came out, it really didn't even recognize us, that we existed or that we used the park. And so we got very involved in trying to say, hey, we're here. And to talk about the things that we wanted to maintain that were good about the park and maybe improve on some things. So this is the map that they've ended up with, and they mentioned DVAA a lot. They mentioned dark skies a lot, and they mentioned astronomy a lot, and it's throughout the plan. The plan is over 200 pages, and we get a lot of mentions. So I think that we are on the map. Specifically, what they've done is they've created a spot where we usually go. We share the spot with the horse trailer parking, and then that means it's a horse paddy material is there in the field. And there are some lights from Knight Road. So the 2 biggest things I guess they did is they gave the horse trailer as a dedicated spot, and this is our spot here, which is going to be kept mowed, level, free of trees, supposedly. And they're supposed to be planting a barrier, a light barrier, all the way across the road. So those 2 things I think will make a difference. And there will be restrooms as well, which they promised would not be lit with. Yeah, and so I think those are pretty good wins. And then there are some nice words in the consensus, the overview kind of statements. One of their consensus objectives of the master plan, they said, is to support municipal ordinances for preservation of natural resources and dark skies. So I was happy to see that. To engage the surrounding municipalities to enact or strengthen riparian buffer, steep slope, tree replacement, dark skies, and other environmental ordinances. And to have dark skies friendly parking area lighting in the Green Lane Recreational Core, which is the only place where they're, that's where the amphitheater is. It's the only place where they have, recommending any changes in the lighting. But they also made the comment that any new pavilions with light, if they have lighting, will have to be dark sky compliant. So I think they got the message. It's all in the implementation, but I think they got the message. So I'm pretty happy about that. Okay, so as you saw, Brian wasn't able to be here tonight, so I just like to, he sent me the list of new members. And we have, looks like 10. That's great news. Nico Nielsen, Leonard Miller, Michael Raphael, Joan Countryman, Valerie Marlowe, Raja Mahidara, Frank Williams, Yao Wang, and Daniel Melamed. So that's a great list. Give them a hand. We have any new members here? Well, maybe we'll see them next month. Okay, we also have an active astrophotography community here for those of you who don't know. And I guess I'm going to invite John Lineberger up to talk about what the astrophotography group is doing.
Thanks, Jan. I think am I on? There we go. I'm John Lineberger, and I work with Lou to do the astrophotography stuff. And usually once a month we have a Zoom call. You can join, it's free, about 2 hours. If you're new, come early. We just had one 2 days ago. It's always the Wednesday right before the general meeting. You can find it on our events calendar. And we had over a dozen people, and we cover all the topics, whatever you're interested in. So we'd love to have you join, and we get a lot of show and tell. A number of the members have some wonderful pictures they're putting out. And if you want to see them early before they hit the website, you can hang out in the call. So that's what I got for you today. Cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other people have, yes.
I'll make a comment. You mentioned about supernovae.
You know what? People can't hear you, so I'll do this.
The Rochester Bright Supernova page gives a listing of all the supernovae that are currently visible. And last month, supernova 2024 GY in NGC 4216 reached about magnitude 12.5. And I was able to get an image of it with my little C-Star S50.
Fantastic.
So, just keep an eye on that, and there may be a bright one. You never know.
Hey, Jan.
Mhm.
Lou, Bill McGinney wanted to say one of the rooms in the cabin is open for March, and that can be for a couple or a single.
Oh, okay. For those of you who didn't hear that, for March, as I mentioned, there is one slot available, but it's a room that can be available for either a single or a couple. Okay, so talk to Bill if you're interested in going. Thanks. Okay, so do we have anyone else, any other
Is that me?
announcements? What?
Me.
Yes, right, I know. I just wanted to see if anybody else had anything. Yes.
I'm eager.
So we are privileged to have Lou here, Lou's here, to tell us about the website. And why are we talking about the website? Well, it's because there's lots of great things you can do on www.dvaa.org. And we just want to make it all easier for you to access. So take it over, Lou. Would you like this mic?
Yeah, I'd like that mic.
Ooh, did it go?
Thank you. What did I call you before, Jeremy? You're gonna be my,
Helper,
you're gonna
primary,
be my login monkey.
login monkey, okay.
Yes, so, let's start with you, logging in.
Do my own account?
Yes. So, as you can see, DVAA.org. Log in. Every single person who's a member gets a login. And let me step back. Thank you, Jeremy. Let me step back from this. Is we had, oh yeah. Woo. So exciting. Who knew lasers work? So we've had a succession of websites before, but this website, I want to say it's almost 6 or 7 years now. So I was able to be the web master, but it's really important to note this is a collaborative tool. And I've been thrilled over the years because of the very simple fact that so many people have worked on this. And I probably know the most about it, but it's only by the very, 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 very little. So the first thing you'll notice, we had Jeremy sign in. So how do you sign in, right? It is firstly and importantly, this is gonna be quite a trick, right? Everyone want to get around the other side so that I can reverse the mouse this way. Unfortunately, the regular mouse did not happen. Let me see if I can get this going because it can be very hard. So Jeremy logged in, and every user has a profile. And we'll look at Jeremy's profile. There's nothing racy there, I'm sure. You know, we can look at it all. It's a public profile.
I saved that for the OnlyFans.
Okay. So there's a good reason why we have a profile there, and we want you to have it there, is because your fellow members can find out things like contact numbers for you if you allow them, where you are, what your interest is, so forth. But before we get there, let's say you couldn't even get here. On the top of the website, we use a service called Club Express. So the website isn't a hand-coded website like I do professionally. This was called a content management system. It's meant to be worked on by groups of people like the club. And we have something like 16-hour a day, 7 days a week support. If you forget your password, you need some information, you can ask them anytime. And for instance, I dealt with, and Jen, I think knows this, is we just added a classifieds module, right? And turned out for some stupid reason, there was all sorts of problems. And I had to go on tech support 3 times, but they exist to make that happen. So anyway, let's just do a whirlwind of things. Firstly, I lost site. Yeah, I know, it's just very hard to mouse. So firstly, we have an events calendar. And there are a lot of events, right? It is, I've lost track actually of how many events that we have at any given time. Hold on a second. Okay. So you can, I know, it's just I'm having problems with the mouse. One of the problems I am having today, and I apologize this to people, is I've just had cataract surgery and I'm getting used to being in my life, getting around here. Here's events. That's what I wanted to.
You want me to do this?
Yeah, that'd be really wonderful. So anyway, scroll up a little bit so that we can look at the calendar just a bit. So we have various events of various types. Just click on any one of them. So you'll see, of course, these events listed on the main website on the front page, but of course they are in the calendar itself. And as you see, there are details. Some things have registrations, some things have directions how to get to the place. And actually, there must be a dozen people in the club now who enter events, right? So it's not just like one sort of thing. We share administrator. Could you scroll down? I love that map. You know, sometimes you will have like maps to the actual site you're going to go, sometimes registration links and what have you. Can we back out of this, please? The homepage. Scroll to the bar. Okay, the next section is observing, and I think one of the most important places to go is, if you notice, there's the beginners section of this, and we have all sorts of articles collated for beginners to get started. And I know there are a ton of resources on the internet, but this really turns out to be a good collection of articles about how to get your hand around astronomy. So scroll back up to the bar, please. And I think Alan Purdy was the person who originally created the first round of these. So again, this is a very collaborative sort of thing. Back to observing, please. So observing sites. Now we have 3 here, and click on French Creek, for instance. So we'll have notes about how to get to the place. We'll have an actual map, literally how to go to there, and it's an active Google map so that you can get your own directions how to go there. But here's the thing that just pleases me no end. We used to have 5 or 6 observing sites, and then we stopped using 2 of them. And suddenly, and it was on my list to fix for a while, and then suddenly magically it got fixed by someone. I'm looking at Jen because I'm guessing that she did it. And so you can't beat that, but we're barely into the site. Let's go to a drop on observing. And now we have rental equipment. Joe Lamb, I don't think, is here today, but if you don't know, we have a bunch of different telescopes and some accessories that we rent out. And this is the place to go look for it. Yeah, not easy to mouse, huh? And you scroll up to the top, please. And then observing again, and then sky conditions. So important. And so our sky clocks help you know what the weather is going to be like. Again, we're not an everything for everybody website, but there's a fair amount of functionality here to get started, and even if you're pretty advanced to use. So then let's talk about star parties. Lots of people find out about us. What happens is they end up going to the page. I've looked at the statistics for the site. They're puttering around, they hear about our club, and suddenly they're finding out what star parties we have, right? And and it's all automated. So if you create an event that is a star party sort of event, it just naturally shows up over here with the direction information. And then under star parties, you get to mark your attendance, register if the thing requires attendance, and so forth. Lots and lots of capabilities. Observing one more, and then observing resources. And it is just presentations around observing. I should also add, and I guess we'll look at documents in a bit, but we have, as a club, an immense amount of documents, the better part of 1,000 documents that range from old newsletters to presentations on all sorts of topics and everything in between. So let's go to photos. This is another great one. So I started this with just a few collections of my own photos, and I have no idea how many astro photos there are here, but it is, as you can see, people have been updating, you scrolled off, but it was 2024 was some of the stuff. And so you have unlimited storage. And you can share your photos, and actually you can even link your photos to have other people look at them. And we have photos on all sorts of topics, like astronomy activity at Donald McLaren, right? And that's his famous radio telescope there. And Don was the guy who started our sales table in the way back when. He was like one of the first people I met back when Mike Atwell was the president, if you imagine. So a long time ago. You're not that old though, so sorry. So, yeah, please.
Yeah.
let's suppose that, you have something of interest, general interest. And you'd like to have it on the website. How do you go about it? How does one go about getting it, let's say,
Well,
a picture or an article
well,
posted?
it turns out we were gonna head there, but let's go right now. Go back to your profile. So Jeremy, in the right-hand corner, go to Jeremy Carlo profiles. And then, upload photo. Right? It is, oh, well, you're on your picture for profile. I meant the profile menu, but it's, go to Jeremy Carlo profile menu. You see the first one. And then you can, if you scroll down, so you can see, you can, I'm just looking for it right now. Photo albums here, click on photo albums. And, then you can add a photo album and then do upload. And, do you have any pictures on your machine you want to upload,
No.
Jeremy? I'm putting.
That's for the OnlyFans.
That's for the OnlyFans. So the point is, you can create an album, and basically what you do is you either upload individual photos or you drag an entire folder of photos. And then, unfortunately, I believe we need AI because there's so many fields that you could set up to actually annotate these photos. It's crazy, but most people just drag their photos in and create the albums. And then we also have common albums that people in the club who are administrators put up too.
Is there a file size limitation?
There probably is, but I put up some pretty big files, you know? So certainly, you know, big fits files have no problem. So shall we go back out one level, go backwards one level? And again, there's all sorts of information. It is basic information, who you are. You can change your username and password. Additional member data, we have fields like what telescope do you own, things like that. And click on member list.
Member list. Or is that-
Yeah, there, sorry. So you can also set up information about you as a member. There's a lot of stuff here, and most people don't take advantage of most of it. Indeed, the reason why we're having this talk is only 40% of the members have ever logged in. Think about that, 40% of the members, which is, you know, they gain a lot of value from the website. So, you know, they see listings. Right now we're logged in. You see Jeremy is logged in and there's a public aspect, which we'll look at this. But the point is that there's so much more if you're logged in. Could we go to imaging? And, you know, there's just a resource page and, you know, we have sections on how to do things in the site. I literally, this just showed up one day, right? From my perspective, it was like, you know, we allow this to happen, but it's pretty comprehensive resources, you know, the specialist, who to talk to that ask the specialist list. Go to the next one, because I don't want to take too much more time on the website, right? Where there's so much more to look through. As you see, there's astrophotography experts, DVAA member images. Those are special albums, right? That are aside from the generic albums that people are putting in, you know? And so here are your, you know, Breezy Hill, you know, all sorts of things. So let's go to documents real fast. So as I said, there's a repository of all sorts of documents, and these range from legal documents like our bylaws. Every newsletter that has ever been produced in the entire history of this club, something on the order of 550 or 600 of them can be downloaded and viewed. I've not looked at a lot in the middle, but I've looked at a lot at the beginning. And I have looked at specific talks, and, you know, just so in case you know, if you have a talk of your own that you're doing, I've stolen for myself and other people here. Look at that.
We've had
For
a
those
slight
who's old enough to
improvement.
know what that means.
We've had a slight improvement in production quality.
Yeah, just a slight. So I would encourage you to look for things. Our observing phones, for instance, at French Creek Park, and, you know, everything is in here. So, you know, and if you look under member docs, This is an area, you just look at member docs on the left. This is not used nearly enough, but every member has the right to create his own folder of his own info that in an astronomy club sort of sense he wants to set. So let's run on, because we don't have a lot of time. Scroll to the top, please, and then we have outreach. Outreach is huge and important. It's what are our outreach events? Scroll down to the bottom also, we talked about the outreach program itself and, you know, what is, you know, top of mind. So, and for those of you who don't know, outreach at DVAA.org is a great way to ask for an outreach event, communicate with the outreach chair. And there are a lot of emails like that associated with the website, president, VP, treasurer, I have to look at the entire list, but there are camping, rentals, all at DVAA.org, and those are very, very, very useful. So, you know, these are just, you know, breakdowns of who the people are, you know, so let's keep going. Club, you're not a member, or if you're a member, do you know your benefits? We have a listing of all the benefits that you have as a club member. That's a good thing to know. You know, go to club camping. And by the way, everything in club is only for people who are actually members of the club. So we're gonna see when we log out that you do not see all these things. Camping trips, a lot of camping trips, talks about where, when, things about them, history of them, and how it goes forward. Let's go to the next one. Thank you. The club committees. DVAA doesn't run by itself. It's because a lot of people volunteer, something on the order of 20 to 25 people consistently volunteer each year to help us run our club. And thank you very much for that. And so you can find out who is doing the club, and apparently my face is there. And for some reason, my favorite picture is Bill's, you know, he's just hip and young, you know, sort of cool. So, sorry if you didn't make the list, but, scroll to the top, please, and do the next. And door prizes, which we haven't done in a while, but we hope to revive.
We have a raffle.
We have a raffle today?
No, every quarter.
Yeah, no, it's funny. We haven't done door prizes.
Well, we did it last month.
Yeah. So, door prizes are great. Learn more about them here, you know, just go through them. The member list. If you want to contact someone in the club and they allow themselves to be contacted, so search for Bourbon, for instance.
Apparently you're at Planet Fitness.
Well, no, you haven't clicked search, have you? Oh, there I am, Drexel Hill. There's my address. And if you scroll down, is there more? Yeah, and there's my card. So I allow people to contact me. So very, very handy, particularly if you're on like groups.io and this guy writes a note and say, yeah, I really want to talk to him. Well, but you don't know his direct email. You can find it there if when he registered, he allowed himself to be have his email go. Please go back up. Okay. Surveys. We've done surveys over the year. It's one of the things we did, for instance, to find out when we did the telescope rental program, we did a survey of what do people want, what they want to do. And so we do surveys quite frequently to figure out how to best tune the club. Let's see videos. Okay. And click for the video page. This is historical videos Brian Lee has done of our stuff. So we're now on YouTube. Probably we should call that historical videos, but we've been recording our meetings for a really, really long time. And there's a lot of them. And just like the fact that we have YouTube and is a big corpus of our stuff, you know, we haven't been sitting sort of still. Classified ads is the newest thing, and it's not really here right now. It's only turned on for members. But in the coming months, we'll start doing classified ads, firstly to the members only, and then when we're happy with it, we'll turn it to be public facing. Is that right, Jim? Okay, so give, okay. Please give us money. They think that's funny. So it turns out, the programs that we provide come because you give us money, and some of us, I've fundraised for the club something on the order of $15,000, but even just a little amount will help. What we'd really like to do, what we're trying to eventually do, is to create an observing site of ours. And I'm going to certainly ask. I was going to ask offline, but I'll ask and no answer. We should think about Green Lane if they're investing so highly, if we want to do something in that sort of way. Lou would love that, of course, but I mean, just in general. So the DVA, go back to that. Go back to give and consider us in your will. And just so you know, there's a $25,000 request from me in my will and to the DVAA. So it's better off you can knock me off and you'll be in better position.
But should we select tonight?
But
After the meeting.
But, it's a relatively easy thing to do, if you care about, public astronomy in Pennsylvania. It's a thing you might consider. I thought was rather important. Okay, then fact. Okay, and then we have some, information about outreach, observing, how membership, like for instance, and so forth. We're trying to get as much information for the users as possible. So let's scroll up. Let's do the last one. And then, of course, I showed you support. Please go back to support because it's so important. And that phone number is available 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Support at Club Express. They're very responsive. If you don't know your password, they're who you talk to. If you don't know how to use the site, they're the people to talk to. If you have some data that's wrong, they're the people. If you have a financial thing, they are definitely the people. So just a few more things. Firstly, Jeremy is an administrator of the site, so he can click on this control panel. And I just want to real quick go in. And we have another 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So the website has all these functions around the website and people and stuff for configuring things. And we go to the website just for fun. For instance, there are website modules that we get to build the website collaboratively together. I personally would be interested in seeing if anyone wants to be a co-webmaster with me to learn about how the site is built. And there's about 10 or 12 people who have administrative rights now who work on different aspects of the site, but it takes a fair amount of effort to keep in tune and to go forward. And then, and there's just all sorts of basics. Please explore. I want to go one more thing, that support tab over there, the little one. There is, I'm sorry, support. If you scroll down a little bit, there's all sorts of help resources about how to, keep scrolling down, I'm sorry. I'm having problems reading. There's all sorts of resources like the how-to guide, an administrator's guide, and getting started in user help. There's a huge corpus of YouTube videos. They come out with a video every week, and they're videos on how to use the site, both for end users and for administrators. So those resources are great. Now, just do one more thing for me, Jeremy, and then we'll be done. You'll notice Jeremy is logged in. If you log out, you'll notice, for instance, that there is no club page, but go to the join. This is really important. This is our benefits, which you saw, the history of the club, and then join DVAA. If you're not a member, we would encourage you to join DVAA. It's super, super simple. You can go through the process online. If you're a member and you need to do things like renew, as just happened last December, you will have right next to your member login, literally when you get to the site, a thing that says, hey, become a member, right? And so it is very, very easy to do. but it's a living, breathing thing, and we hope you'll participate in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lou. And I just wanted to say, Lou has been absolutely amazing in terms of setting up this website, finding Club Express, he is not exaggerating when he's talking about how responsive they are and what a good experience it's been to have this website, which Lou set up for us.
And I'm sorry, I just forgot one thing. This will take 20 seconds. Thank you. So I think some of you know that I'm a computer scientist, and one of the things you may not know is I'm an AI specialist, and so I'm very concerned about risks related to artificial intelligence. And so on the 20th this month in Malvern at the Microsoft Center, I'm going to be hosting a pretty big talk on AI safety. I have information about it if anyone is interested. I know it's not off topic, but I think it's one of those concerning things for our society. Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like to turn it over to our program chair, Jeremy.
All right, thanks, Jan. Now we're up to the moment we've all been waiting for. I'm delighted to have Professor Paul Halpern with us tonight. He's a professor at St. Joseph's University. You're at the University of the Sciences, which is now merged with St. Joe's, so there's a long story there. So Paul did present to us about 3 years ago, but he joined us from the multiverse back when we were on Zoom. So tonight we have him here in person, and he also has some books in the back, which I'm sure he'll tell you about. So Paul is a professor at St. Joe's, as I said. He did his undergraduate degree at Temple University, right down the road in Philly. He did his PhD at the University of Stony Brook out on Long Island. He's the author of a number of different books, including The Cyclical Serpent, Cosmic Wormholes, Flashes of Creation, and Einstein's Dice and Schrodinger's Cat. His most recent book is entitled The Allure of the Multiverse, and he's here tonight to talk about that. So please join me in welcoming Paul Halpern. Clicker here. It's always the opposite of what you think.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I was part of a merger. It was a little bit like a galactic merger, but it was 2 universities in Philadelphia that somehow collided and formed one university. So anyway, thank you, Jeremy, for the kind introduction and for inviting me here to DVAA. I think it's my first time in person, which is pretty cool. And I wanted to speak about my new book, The Allure of the Multiverse. A question I wanted to resolve in doing this research for the book is the whole question of, is it of interest for science to look at things that are not directly observable? There's this whole idea of the scientific method, of falsifiability, of doing, an experiment, doing observation, and proving things. And the multiverse idea came up, and a lot of that involves things that are not directly observable. And when doing research for the book, I realized that we need to keep an open mind about these things.
Observability is kind of fundamental.
Okay, I'm just sorry. Can we hold the questions for after I, as I go along, because I'm just starting to talk. So anyway, observability is certainly something ideal, and there's a popular meme, Pixar, it didn't happen, and certainly the public is fascinated by images of things, images from the Hubble Space Telescope and now the James Webb Space Telescope, which has revealed these wonderful images of the very early universe, including galaxies from before the first billion years of the history of the Big Bang. And a lot of information has come out of that, such as galaxies that are that are almost fully formed early on, so there's a lot of questions being raised about galactic formation models and about cosmology itself. So certainly the James Webb Space Telescope has a lot of appeal. So you might want to say, can't we just go always to observability? Can't we, only look at the universe, parts of the universe that are fully observable? And indeed, so much of the universe is unexplored that in some ways makes sense. However, we know that what we call the universe is really something beyond the observable universe. So the observable universe turns out to have a size of about 46 billion light years in radius. And you might wonder about that number, which seems a little curious because we think that the age of the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. So then the question is, how can we observe things that are 46 billion light years out there? And though the age of the universe is less than 14 billion years old, and that has to do with the fact that the universe is expanding and accelerating in its expansion. So galaxies, as they are moving away from us, they might give off light very early on in the history of the universe. We might pick up the light from a galaxy, but now we find out, based on our calculations, that the galaxy that we're seeing is actually much, much farther away, up to 46 billion light years away, would be the distance that the first light that possibly could have been sent to us in the history of the universe would the object that would be imaging right now. So we can see objects that are much farther away because they've moved very far away in the interim. I like to think of it as a little bit like a football player who throws you a football, and if they're standing right there and not moving, you can estimate by the speed of the football how far away they are, how long it takes to get the football. But if they throw it and then they're running backward away from you at top speed, your estimate has to take into account not just how fast they can throw the football, but how fast they're running away from you. Similarly, we have to take into account for galaxies the speed of light, which is a signal they send us, but also the speed of the galaxies as the universe expands. So it's kind of an interesting question about the observable universe. So the question is, do we only talk about the observable universe? Does it make sense to talk about things beyond the radius of the observable universe? And traditionally, the answer is yes, because when we talk about general relativity, Einstein's theory of how gravity works, Einstein and others consider the geometry of the universe and talk about the shape of space. So you may have heard talk about what shape space has in the concept of general relativity, because shape and geometry tells us, in a way, how much matter there is in the universe. So it has an importance in Einstein's theory, because if you have more matter, the universe would curl up, kind of like a ball, the first figure. If you had very little matter, the universe curls a different way, like a potato chip, or some people say a Pringles potato chip, regularity. And then finally, the middle ground is flat, and that's what astronomers believe that the universe is based on current calculations, that it has a flat geometry, meaning it goes in straight lines in all directions. Now, you might want to say, okay, the observable universe is flat, but then the question is what lies beyond it. We kind of assume that it just keeps going. It'll be kind of weird if the observable universe was flat and then right beyond it just started curling or doing funny things. So we do make predictions about regions beyond observability. So that's something that physicists and astronomers talk about. Now, I'll give you another example where we talk about things that are unobservable. We'd like to talk about what happens inside a black hole's event horizon, even though no signals can reach us from inside the event horizon ever, because of the way black holes are. And if you wanted to see what's inside a black hole's event horizon, if you're in a spaceship, You could, but you couldn't ever send your information out to the rest of the world, to the rest of the universe. And of course, for an average sized black hole, you wouldn't have very long to live inside the black hole, matter of seconds. So it wouldn't be, a wise thing to do. But anyway, we talk about the interior of a black hole, and in that case, somebody might say, that's not science. Why are you talking about something that's not science? It's not directly observable. Well, it's because we have very good models of what is inside the black hole, and then that's compared to the behavior outside the black hole, which is accretion of matter in the vicinity of the black hole. So now let's turn to the multiverse, and the multiverse is a subject of much speculation in terms of movies. And similarly, black holes, to use an analogy, when they're first proposed, and the first model of a black hole, interestingly enough, this has to do with the Oscars, was the first physical model, I should say, was proposed by J. Robert Oppenheimer, which is briefly mentioned in the Oppenheimer movie, that he talked about stellar collapse and what would happen if it be a catastrophic collapse. So we can thank Oppenheimer for that. But then for a long time, people didn't really think black holes were real. They thought they were mathematical artifacts. And then American physicist John Miller started talking about them more, and he coined the term black hole. And then suddenly, in the 1970s, there was all this interest in black holes, books about black holes, but they still weren't, astronomers still weren't sure if they really existed in space until Cygnus X1 black hole was found. But nevertheless, Disney made movies about the black hole. The movie The Black Hole, which came out in the late 70s, which speculated that going inside a black hole was a little bit like a hellish landscape, where you discovered your fate and all sorts of stuff like that, which had nothing to do with black holes. And so it was a little bit of a strange movie. But similarly, there's a lot of films out there now with multiverse themes. So just like if you watch Disney's Black Hole movie, you don't say, oh, that's really what black holes are like. And you don't say, oh my God, black holes, they're just science fiction. We shouldn't really talk about them because it's not real science. Similarly, just because there are multiverse movies doesn't mean that the multiverse is necessarily fiction. And I'll argue that there are some reasons to take it seriously. And these are some recent movies: Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, and Marvel movies. And then probably best known is Everything Everywhere All at Once, about Evelyn Wong, who ran a laundromat and discovered all these different versions of herself. And that won multiple Oscars last year.
At once.
Pardon?
No, at once.
Yes. Yeah.
In everything.
All these Oscars at once. Amazing. So I'll stop for a second and see if there's any other questions right now. Now that I've sort of got the talk rolling. There was a question before about observability, or did I answer it? Okay, somewhere out there's a question about observability. Okay, so why does the multiverse appeal to the public? So I call the multiverse that appeals to the public the cultural multiverse. It's not the scientific multiverse. But one question is, what is out there? This is kind of a deep question that, shows like Star Trek answer and so forth. And Star Trek even had its own multiverse model with Mirror Mirror in the original series, where Spock is evil and has a beard, and so that was one of the first depictions in fiction. So there's a question: what is out there? If you're in a region, we have, as human beings, curious human beings, a fascination with what lies beyond it, and then even more importantly, what if question? about choices in our lives, wouldn't it be interesting to see all the alternative paths? Right? So if you move to Radnor Township and you had, a choice, and you could have ended up instead in Haverford Township, or in the state of Delaware, or somewhere else in the world. What would your life be like if you lived elsewhere? And what would it be like if you took on a different job? And then there's always this question: you could have a youthful passion, and you could have an opportunity for a more serious quote unquote job. And suppose your youthful passion was being in a rock band. So you're a bass player for a rock band, and then your parents say, like, you're not going to make any money in the rock band. You should go and become an accountant. And then you quit the rock band and you become an accountant instead. And then it turns out your name is Paul McCartney, and it's like you made that choice. And then somehow you managed to see this alternative universe where if you'd stayed in the band, it would become the Beatles and internationally famous. And you didn't know that until you saw this alternative reality. So we don't know what would have happened if we're in a rock band, if we stayed in the rock band and, pursue that as a career. So we make career choices and we don't know how our lives would have ended up. The same with relationship choices, friendship choices. So it's very interesting to see these alternatives, and we don't really have access to them, but it'll be interesting if we did have access. Once again, this is not the science of the multiverse, this is the cultural idea. So for example, if you're running for the train, let's say you're running for SEPTA train at St. David's Station and you just miss it. And then you think, wow, I'm so unlucky. But then you find out there was some incident on the tracks or something, and and people got rattled by the incident. You say, oh, I turned out to be lucky. I shouldn't have gotten on that train because that was the one that, had the track problems. So you never know if missing a train or making a train is better, because you feel lucky if you make a train, but you never know. Maybe, the person of your dreams was in the next train or in the previous train. So you just never know if you, what would happen. And that was played with in the film Sliding Doors, one of the best multiverse films, where Gwyneth Paltrow, in one part of the movie, she makes a subway train, and the other part she misses the subway train. And it shows you how by missing the subway train, she doesn't find out that her boyfriend is cheating on her. And she goes on in a state of oblivious, she's sort of a state of oblivion that she doesn't know that, her boyfriend is doing this. And the movie goes on and shows the two branches, one in which she discovers that her boyfriend has been cheating, the other, she doesn't know this. And then I won't give it away, but there's a twist ending. And it's really kind of an interesting film if you haven't seen it. But what about science? So could there be parallel universes in reality is a good question. And that idea goes all the way back to, surprisingly, a talk by Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, in one of his last talks, started talking about some of the problems with quantum physics and some of the qualms he had about quantum physics. Now, famously, Einstein said about quantum physics, God does not play dice with the universe. He didn't like the idea of quantum randomness, but Einstein had a lot of beefs with quantum physics. So the talk took place at Princeton physicist John Wheeler's class in relativity. It was the first class in relativity taught at Princeton. This was, as I said, back in 1954. And Wheeler knew Einstein very well. So that's a picture of Einstein, Hideki Yukawa, another famous physicist, and John Wheeler. And Einstein's beef that he addressed in the talk had to do with quantum measurement theory. So in the standard version of quantum mechanics, orthodox quantum mechanics, also known as the Copenhagen interpretation, named after the city where Niels Bohr reigned supreme in the 1920s and 1930s, and later. The idea of quantum physics is that it's separate from the human world. So the human world obeys very predictable laws, like if I drop this pointer, I'm not going to do it, but if I drop this pointer, we would know how fast it would go and when it would hit the ground. But the quantum world has these weird probabilistic laws, and the way you handle it is you set up a divide, and sometimes called the Heisenberg divide, named after another physicist, between the quantum world and the classical world of human beings. So then how does that work? Well, humans ask questions of the quantum world. They say, what is the position of an electron, which is a negative charged particle? Where is the electron located? And then by asking that question, the quantum state divides into possibilities for where the electron could be. And then it kind of knows to divide among all these options. And then once the measurement is taken, the state collapses into randomly into one of the possibilities. And the measure says, oh, here's where it is. And it's not predictable, directly predictable, but it's predictable in a probabilistic way. You could, if you did multiple experiments, you would get a certain frequency of outcome. So that's the standard interpretation of quantum physics. And it's a little bit like a carton where you have dividers. So the electron could be in any of those dividers, each with a certain weighted probability. So there might be a greater chance of one, lesser chance of the others. And then you take a measurement and it just goes into one box. And that's called quantum wave function collapse or quantum state collapse. Now, strangely enough, this carton doesn't have to have just a finite number of dividers. You could have a situation where an electron has a chance of being literally anywhere in a region. So you might have an infinite number of dividers. And this is called Hilbert space. Hilbert space is a space of all quantum possibilities. It's not a real space, it's an abstract space, but it's where quantum states live. And they exist in this Hilbert space until a measurement is taken. And Hilbert came up with an interesting analogy for an infinite space, which is called the Hilbert's hotel analogy, where you have a hotel with an infinite number of rooms. Okay, so suppose you were late at night, you were very tired, and drove up to Hilbert's hotel, and you see a big sign that says no vacancy. But you figure you're tired, maybe somehow the innkeeper can do something. So you go inside, and the innkeeper said, no problem, we can find a room for you. And immediately gets in the intercom and says, okay, person in room 1, sorry, but you'll need to move to room 2. Person in room 2, move to room 3. Person in room 3, move to room 4. And then all the way down the line. And because it's infinite, that creates a space for the traveler. And then the next person that comes along turns out to be a general of an army, says, I have an army of infinite number of soldiers. I want to find a room for every soldier. And then the innkeeper says, no problem. We'll take everybody and switch them to the even rooms. So person 1 goes to room 2, person 2 goes to room 4, etc. And then your soldiers can have all the odd rooms. So this is really strange when you talk about an infinite space, even an abstract space, all these conundrums come up, all these strange situations. Well, imagine that a human being, an observer, creates this system just by choosing a measurement, and then the system collapses down possibly from an infinite number of possibilities down to one possibility. It's almost like magic, but that's the Copenhagen interpretation. So Einstein asked the question at this lecture, could a mouse do the same thing? If a mouse observed a quantum state, could it do the measurement? And that's called Einstein's mouse. as opposed to Schrodinger's cat. So anyway, attending the lecture was a young student of John Wheeler, Hugh Everett III. Now, this is a picture of him, I think in his 30s, but he was in his 20s at the time. I couldn't find a solitary picture of him in his 20s. But anyway, he was a very inquisitive, stubborn young man. And in fact, when he was a boy, he wrote to Einstein at the age of 12. And I think his mother encouraged him. And he wrote a letter saying, Professor Einstein, what would happen if an immovable object were met by an irresistible force? That's kind of an old conundrum. And Einstein wrote back, there's no such thing as an immovable object. There's no such thing as an irresistible force. But I think there's a very stubborn boy out there who's asking too many questions. And that letter is deserved, and that was to Hugh Everett. And then Hugh Everett finally met his idol when he was in his 20s at Princeton in the graduate program. And that changed his career path because he originally was going to do economics, and then he switched it to physics. So, yes. So Hugh Everett came up with his own quantum physics model that avoided the idea of collapse. He said, you shouldn't have human beings play a role in nature. Human beings should be completely out of the picture. Well, then how do you explain the fact that if you take a measurement of an electron, before you have all these possibilities, after you only see one possibility? And Everett said, well, maybe you're part of the system. So you have split up into all these possibilities too. And one version of you sees the electron, let's say 1 nanometer to the left of a measuring mark. The other sees the electron 1 nanometer to the right of a measuring mark. And there's just different versions of you existing in this Hilbert space. So not real space, but this abstract space has all these versions of you that kind of keep going and don't know about each other. And they don't have any interaction with each other. So there's no real contradiction. So that's Everett's idea. We imagine that the observer, so I couldn't find a picture of 5 people, but these are actually triplets, but I imagine them to be the same person observing different outcomes of the universe, different outcomes of the quantum measurement. So that's the way it is. People branch, their conscious existence bifurcates. And John Wheeler was intrigued by Everett's idea because he remembered an older idea by physicist Richard Feynman, called Sum Over Histories, that electrons, when they're interacting with each other, can take many different possibilities at once. And then once you take a measurement of electron scattering, all the different possibilities add up to one result. Now, there's a difference here because this takes place in the abstract space. It's not, it doesn't involve people. It involves just events that are going on in an abstract space that we can't directly measure. So it's a little bit different. But both ideas are similar to a short story by a great Argentine writer, Jorge Luis Borges, called The Garden of Forking Paths, that says that time is forking constantly into all these possibilities. But unlike Feynman's Sum of Our Histories, Everett's hypothesis imagines reality actually splitting. And I have here pictured the Schrodinger's cat experiment. So the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment was a way of trying to parody quantum physics, and it involved the idea of placing a cat in a box with a radioactive sample. And in quantum physics, until you measure until you have a Geiger counter measure the radioactivity, but you keep a sample in a box, it might be in a mixed state of decayed and not decayed. And so therefore, the sample Schrodinger imagined if it decayed, it would trigger a Geiger counter, which would trigger a hammer to hit a flask of poison and kill a cat. But if it doesn't decay, the cat is spared. And Schrodinger said, until you open the box, just like the sample would be in a mixed state of decayed and non-decayed, the cat would be in a zombie-like mixed state of alive and dead. So at the same time. And Schrodinger said, this is absurd. It means that quantum physics is incomplete and needs more explanation. So Schrodinger thought there must be a better way of explaining. So in Everett's view, the cat would be either alive or dead. In one branch of quantum reality, the cat would be alive. In the other branch, the cat would be dead. And then in one branch, there'd be a human being that would say, wow, it's great, the cat's alive. Hallelujah. And then the other branch, the person would be mourning and saying, oh my God, what have I done? Why did I do this experiment? And the two branches, the two people would go on forever, the two forks of the same person. And they would never meet. There'd be no way of interacting. But that would explain why nature gives you this phenomenon of having these two possibilities without having human beings cause us this collapse. So it's kind of elegant that way. So shortly after Everett proposed this idea, Niels Bohr visited Princeton. So that's actually a picture. Niels Bohr's in the center and Hugh Everett's to the right of him. And you see Everett smiling and trying to entice Bohr to consider his idea. But Bohr was very stubborn too. And Bohr was very wedded to his idea, which got him the Nobel Prize and, you know, his early ideas about physics. And he was kind of a celebrity at that point. Queen Elizabeth met with him when she visited Denmark in the 1950s. So Bohr didn't want to rattle things or shake up things. He didn't want to consider this radical hypothesis. Nevertheless, Wheeler was still interested in Everett's idea, and he sent it to a physicist, Bryce DeWitt, who was a very serious physicist. And DeWitt was editing a conference proceedings. And even though Everett wasn't at the conference, Wheeler said, please include this in the conference proceedings. It's an interesting paper. And when DeWitt got it, the paper, he was just floored. Like, how could you really talk about this idea of splitting? And he said he doesn't feel splitting. He doesn't wake up in the morning, brush his teeth, have breakfast, and then reality splits into two possibilities. He just doesn't feel that. And then Everett wrote back and said, well, look at Copernicus and Galileo. They said the Earth is rotating, but nobody feels the rotation of the Earth. Does that mean it really doesn't happen? And DeWitt wrote back and said, touche, young man, you have a good point, and became a believer from that point on in Everett's idea, which he dubbed the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, and published in the 1970s a popularization of it, which was picked up by a lot of people, including the late science popularizer Martin Gardner was interested in it, and a lot of people were really interested in this idea. It became very popular around 1970. Now, around 1970, another physicist, Brandon Carter, found out about this Everett idea, probably from DeWitt, and said, you know, maybe we can apply the idea of multiple universes, not just on a quantum level, but to try to resolve a very serious question about the universe. Why is the universe special? Why is gravity just the right amount to create, just the right strength to create stars and planets? Why is electricity just, you know, a good strength for producing, you know, the structures we see? Why are electrons and protons exactly the opposite charge? So atoms are electrically neutral. And there are all these coincidences in the universe that if they changed, the universe might not have formed structure. So we wouldn't have these great stars and galaxies that we can observe, places like Green Lane and so forth, like they just want to be out there. We look up, be dark sky and be like, okay, dark sky, where's the structures? Where are the stars and galaxies? So the fact is that that the idea that we have structures out there, that we have stars, galaxies, planets, and everything else must have to do somewhat with the physics of the universe, of star formation. And then that goes back to these constants of nature. And so Brandon Carter came up with the idea, anthropic principle, that if the universe was somewhat different, we wouldn't be here because planets wouldn't be here. And then we wouldn't be talking about it. So maybe there's an array of possible universes, a whole range, and some of them are, gravity's too strong to form structures. Some of them's gravity's too weak. Some of the universes collapse really early, like in a million years, suddenly they collapse and they never have time for stars and galaxies to form. Other universes might expand so quickly that stars and galaxies can't form because the outward expansion doesn't allow things to coagulate. So Brandon Carter said, of all these possibilities in, what we now know as a multiverse, our universe is the one special one that can support life. And sometimes this issue is called the fine-tuning problem, getting the constants of nature just right. And the anthropic principle narrows everything down to the few or one possibility in which intelligent life can form, and we can talk about the universe. But shortly after Carter came up with the idea, some physicists, including Alan Guth and Andre Linde, came up with the idea of inflation. Inflation is the idea of an era of ultra rapid expansion in the very early universe that smooths out the universe. And that explains why the galaxy counts are pretty much the same in all directions, that the temperature of the universe, as judged by the cosmic microwave background, is pretty much the same in all directions. And inflation says that the universe was a small region of it, was stretched out extremely rapidly by an energy field, and that smoothed everything out, which is why the universe is what we call today isotropic, meaning pretty much the same in all directions. So inflation also explains structure formation. In that instant of inflation, it takes tiny quantum fluctuations, which are tiny random glitches in the cosmic vacuum, and stretches them out and turns them into large fluctuations, which have a certain amount of gravity, and they start attracting energy and mass together that eventually forms the seeds of stars and planets. So inflation is a very successful theory. And the idea is that it would just create one universe that explains the universe that we see, the observable universe that we see. But alas, that was not to be, because the mechanism for inflation, which is this energy field, also can produce other bubble universes. So theoretically, there's not just one bubble universe created after the Big Bang, but lots of bubbles created out there, which each would form its own universe. Now, then you can talk about the anthropic principle, distinguishing ones that have intelligent life from ones that don't have intelligent life. But it makes the whole picture very complicated. And that is called eternal inflation, or the inflationary multiverse. And there are ideas about detecting these other bubble universes through scars in the cosmic microwave background, which is the radio hiss left over from the Big Bang. And these scars would be the result of collisions with other bubble universes very early on in the history of the universe. So scientists have been trying to look for these, including using the cosmic microwave background probes, and including this scientist, Heriana Perez, who has been trying to look for signals in the cosmic microwave background of bubble collisions. And she's been looking for years and is not very optimistic, but feels that it's an important endeavor to either rule them in or rule them out. And so very important researcher. Another area the multiverse emerges in is the idea of string theory. String theory is the idea that particles are actually strands of energy, but mathematically, for technical reasons, these strands of energy vibrate in a space that is not three-dimensional plus time, but a space that is 9 or 10-dimensional plus time. So the question is where all these extra dimensions go. And there's a theory that early in the history of the universe, these dimensions crush down, kind of like a carton that's stamped on, and it kind of crushes down, and that's called compactification. But it turns out that there are 10 to the 500 ways, which is 10 followed by 500 zeros, that these extra dimensions can crush down. So and these possibilities are called Calabi-Yau manifolds. And the Calabi, interestingly enough, is named after Eugene Calabi, who was a professor at Penn, who passed away, I think, a few months ago. He lived in Bryn Mawr, so he didn't live very far from here at all. And he was something like 100 or 101 when he passed away. But anyway, just interesting fact.
I have a stupid question related to this.
Sure.
I keep seeing 10 to the 500. It sounds a very precise number. Is that an approximation or is it?
It's an approximation.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, it's not, it'll be a weird coincidence if it's exactly 10 to
exactly.
the 500. But it's just an estimate.
It's an absurdly large
yeah.
number.
But anyway, each of those possibilities creates its own universe dynamics. It creates its own physics. So the question is, are all of those out there somewhere? Some of those, and all of them have different laws, and different particle interactions. But some researchers use the multiverse idea to try to narrow them down to one and say, well, all the other ones don't really work as universes to create living beings, but there's one of them out there that does work, and that's our universe. So once again, using the anthropic principle, saying ours is the Goldilocks universe, not too strong gravity, not too weak gravity, etc. So
Interject here.
yes.
I think we should hold the questions to the end because they can't hear them on YouTube unless we pass the mic around and that gets them.
Okay, I'm almost finished actually, and then we can pass the mic around. So another way that the multiverse is invoked is to explain the small but non-zero cosmological constant. Cosmological constant was a stability term that Einstein added in 1917 in his first model of the universe, because he thought the universe should be stable, because he grew up with Newtonian physics, the idea that the universe has absolute time and space, and he wanted to explain that, the idea that space is static and that the stars move, but space doesn't move. And then that was put into question by Edwin Hubble in 1929, who showed that the universe is actually expanding. And Einstein said, hey, wait a minute, why did I add a stability term? That was not really very bright of me. And he called it his biggest blunder. So he eliminated that term from his equations. But later in 1998, two teams of astronomers using distant supernova and speedometers discovered the acceleration of the universe. And they said that adding the cosmological constant term back explains why the universe is speeding up in its expansion. But it has to be a really tiny term, because if it was too big, that would mean that the universe would be speeding up very early on in its history and stars wouldn't have formed. So it's just a tiny kick that kicks in around now in later part of the universe, but wasn't very significant in the early part of the universe when the stars and galaxies were formed. Well, turns out, so this is the model there. It turns out that quantum theory predicts a huge cosmological constant based on the energy of empty space, but astronomy detects a small one. So we want to try to understand the difference. And one way of explaining the difference is saying that we live in a multiverse, and most of the universes have a large cosmological constant, but ours is an outlier and happens to be one of the few with a small one, explaining why we have stable structures, because a universe with a large cosmological constant would just simply blow up and we never have stable structures. So once again, the fact that we're here explains why the cosmological constant must be low. So in conclusion, multiverses in fiction and science are very different. You can't walk through a portal and meet your evil doppelganger in science ideas of the multiverse. But there's different kinds of scientific multiverses. The many worlds of Everett, the anthropic principle of Brandon Carter, trying to explain why we are here. Eternal inflation of Andre Linde, explaining all these other bubble universes. String theory, a bunch of different physicists trying to use the multiverse to explain why there are all these possibilities in string theory. So for more about the multiverse, here's my book, and I brought some copies, which I'd be glad to sign. I can give them away or sell them at the list price, which is $30. So I have a few copies. After we do the questions and answers, if you want a copy, I'll be $30 in cash or check, and I'd be glad to sign it for you, one of the copies. They're also available up the road or down the road in Wayne at the Main Point bookstore, where I did a signing some time ago. And they're available online also. So anyway, that's my talk. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to pass you the mic so that everyone on YouTube gets to hear you.
Thank you for the lecture, it's great. Is there any math or physics that apply to the fact that I could have been, I'm over here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Didn't know we're in the multiverse.
That's the multiverse.
Yeah.
So is there any math or physics that applies to the fact that I could have come here tonight, or I could have decided to stay at home? And if I stayed at home, is there any physics about that saying, okay, that would have been a different universe or a different option or whatever you want? Is there any math or physics?
Well,
that
I
apply?
won't say no, but all the motions that you do are all basically all the atoms and molecules. So there's, and then there's the whole, you're talking about a conscious decision. So consciousness is something that is not very well understood. There are neuroscientists trying to see if they can kind of measure it or understand it, but physicists generally don't address consciousness, which is why the whole idea of an observer making a decision and having that, affect nature was something that physicists didn't really like and are trying to find a way out of.
I was just wondering, there's, where was that separate universe that I mentioned? The one that I stayed on, where would that exist in place and time?
So physics doesn't really address that. So the many worlds idea involves very specific quantum events. So if there's two versions of you, it wouldn't be one that stays home and one that comes out here. It'd be one that sees an electron over here and another that sees an electron over here. Very, very subtle differences.
It seems to some degree, maybe I'm way off on this, when you're saying, is it like, so the science version of the multiverse may deal with a variety of different things, but the other thing seems more like probability, right? Like, you have a million monkeys in a room typing on typewriters, they come up with Shakespeare, or maybe they don't, or you have a machine that flips a coin forever and ever and ever, and how many times will come up heads? Like, when you were talking about like the Paul McCartney thing, is that what you were saying more or less? Or like when you're saying that, yeah, the multiverse, there's a scientific version of it, and then there's this other kind of more, it seems more like probability, right? Like if you choose to do this, or you choose to do that.
Well, I guess one version, the popular version, has to do with events in real life that sometimes have to do with life choices, is what I'm saying. And life choices have to do with conscious decision making, the idea of free will, which some philosophers, I'm not a philosopher, but some philosophers believe in free will, and some philosophers don't believe in free will. But of course, if you don't believe in free will, does that mean you can convince others that, that free will is an illusion? Because they're already determined, their ideas are already determined. So there's a big mystery there. But these are all mysteries of the brain, and the idea of how, gray matter in the brain can somehow come up with this illusion or reality that we're actually making a decision. All the way back to Descartes and earlier, scientists have been trying to struggle with these ideas. But I don't really think, there are some physicists like Roger Penrose who've tried to delve into this. He has a book many years ago, The Emperor's New Mind, about consciousness. But as a physicist myself, I don't feel like physics at this point, neuroscience is not known well enough, the physics of it, and of the consciousness aspect. There's not really an equation that physicists can write and say like, okay, these are the choices that people make. This is why they make these choices, and so forth.
So adding on to the theory that every time you make a decision, there's multiple different outcomes that could happen, does that mean that an exponential amount of different options are always being created every single time somebody makes a decision?
Well, that, once again, that's a cultural idea. That's the idea of the multiverse in film, that every time you make a decision, there's other versions of you, but there's no scientific basis for that in any of these theories.
And
We like to think that other versions of us are out there, but it's not that physics is coming up with a theory and saying, oh yes, you actually split up every time you make a decision. The closest would be Hugh Everett's idea that you split when a quantum system is splitting, but that happens randomly, I should point out. Doesn't happen. The splitting is completely random. It's not having to do with any decision or free will.
yeah, and on top of physics, do you think that dark matter and dark energy could filter into the mystery if multiverses actually exist?
So that's another question, but dark energy is some substance that's pushing galaxies away from each other. And some physicists use the cosmological constant to model dark energy. As a cosmological constant says that there's some term in the equations that models galaxies being pushed away. So there's a connection there. So multiverse theory talks a little bit about dark energy, that it has to be at a certain level, because if it's too strong, dark energy would just split worlds apart, would split planets apart, would split stars apart if it was too strong. So it has to be a very weak form of dark energy, which is what the multiverse theories say. Dark matter I don't think there's really a connection with the multiverse there, but it's another unknown substance.
Hi there, I have a question from YouTube and then I'll ask one of my own if I'm allowed. Read this, so from Ken Coplinger. Does the many worlds theory address dark matter, which you just asked? So did you answer that completely?
Yeah, so I would say no.
Okay,
Okay, quick
So-
answer.
yes, so my own question has to do with computation. So I'm a computer scientist. I've created world simulations for very low value of the world. So you know, I'm under the impression there's two vastly different ideas of what the multiverse is. It's a thing, and I use that in a very anodyne thing. It exists in a very, very, very literal sense. I don't know what that sense is, but it exists. Or is it some combination of information and computation that arises? So as an example, you've said that the electron could be this way, that way, and the thing is split. But also, can't there be the notion that it arises as an observable event in reality that's supplied on demand, which effectively what computation could do?
Supply and demand, I'm not quite sure how thinking that electron in existence would work.
Reality either exists, right, in a very, very fundamental way. It's
Yeah.
stuff and fields and movements and things, and the reason why is because it is. And so if you looked out 10 billion light years in that way, there'd be a thing there that would have some properties that you may not see, as opposed to something sensing literally, like a game, effectively sensing you're looking over there and it supplies a thing for you to look at. And I understand that's sort of like the epistemology of that's sort of crazy, but it's I ask.
Well, there are some theories, and I'm not so familiar with them, but that the universe is a simulation.
That's effectively what it is.
Right. So that's another multiverse idea in a way. And I actually have an article out there, free content, that I wrote for New Scientist about the top 10 multiverse movies. And I mentioned The Matrix, which is, of course, the idea that the universe is a simulation by these aliens to try to fool us. But it's hard for me to imagine like intelligence so profoundly beyond ours to create an entire universe as a simulation and to fool us, completely. It just, even as creating like a small simulation takes a lot of computation and takes a lot of planning, but imagining an entire universe with all the laws and all the possible interactions is just kind of mind-blowing. It doesn't mean it's impossible. But then to say, okay, well, there's this other group of beings out there, but they're real and we're not real. That also seems kind of troubling to me. Like, why would they be real? Maybe they're a simulation of some other being. And then it goes into, it gets so complicated that I think, well, okay, maybe the theologians are right because they have more, simple model.
Well, okay. And originally it was Nick Bostrom,
Yeah,
philosopher, scientist, but
Right.
okay, thank you.
As forgot the name.
My interjection was, if anybody saw young Sheldon last night, he didn't know what a Yao manifold was. And got put down in this class that he's taken title. He also didn't know about the multiverse, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Was this a new episode?
Yes, it was last night. It's the last season.
Okay.
My question is, recently there was another large structure called the Big Ring, 1.3 billion light years in size, that sort of calls into question the universe being isotropic. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, as someone, I did my PhD thesis on anisotropic universes. And I looked at something called mixed master universe, among other things, which I talk about a little bit in my book. And I worked briefly in England with Professor John Barrow, and he said, well, it could be that the universe is anisotropic, don't rule it out. So I kind of, some part of me kind of roots for that possibility just because, you know, not that my thesis will prove, PhD thesis will prove important, but, you know, some of these models might, of anisotropic models might make a comeback, but everything I've read so far says on the very, 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 very largest scale, by approximation, the universe is still isotropic, but eventually there could be a structure that's so big that you would say, hey, wait a minute, no, it's not really isotropic. So, but I haven't read specifically about the big ring, but you said it was more than 1 billion light years in diameter, so that's pretty substantial. But still, I'd have to do a quick calculation to estimate the surface area of the observable universe. So it still might not be enough.
What do you think about the holographic principle?
Well, it works. So the idea that information is on the surface works well for black holes, but it's a little abstract for the universe itself to imagine that there's this surface around the universe that contains all of its information. That's what the holographic principle is, that the inside of something is reflected on information on this exterior. And that makes real sense for black holes because you can't really probe the interior of a black hole, but everything that comes into a black hole leaves a mark on the event horizon as it comes in. You can kind of almost see things like spaceships and so forth coming in. They're fading light on the event horizon. So that's where the idea comes from, is that you can take, you know, something and represent it on its exterior, not just the interior. But I understand that people are talking about it for the universe, but I'm not sure if I quite believe in it.
Seems pretty out there for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't you really have the same problem as hidden variable theory that ultimately, almost by definition, it's not testable?
Yeah, that's you mean with many worlds?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of these ideas are testable, like the bubble collisions. Many worlds, you have to kind of, people who make a claim for it say, well, you can't really know what the outcomes will be if you split, because the two people who split can't really compare notes. But the way they try to get around it, and I'm not quite sure if this is right or not, but they imagine somebody who knows quantum theory and knows the probability of different outcomes and kind of making a bet and saying, well, if the electron's over here, I get a huge payoff. And then making the bet based upon quantum predictions. And then that kind of somehow skews the results so that they're more likely to end up in a state where that is realized to get the payoff. And I don't know if I have, this is kind of philosophers talk about this. I don't know if I have it exactly right, but they're using ideas of game theory and probability. You know, probability was mentioned to try to predict what the possibilities are and say, okay, well, we think in our theory that the predictions will be matched. Therefore, many worlds is a good model. Yeah, I'm kind of dubious too, but I'm just trying to present it. Yeah, in my book, I try not to take sides. I try to present some of these arguments in a kind of neutral way.
Many worlds, the microphone would show up just in place immediately.
That's right, or be multiple microphones.
Dr. Hopper, how do we, you talk about these multi-universes and how is that observable? And how can you compare, the outcome, like you were just talking about the last question you're answering.
you need a frame of reference. And if you're in this universe, how do you know about the other universe? I mean, like, for example, we know light exists because, you know, we do stuff to it and maybe you can observe what happens.
Well, the easiest multiverse to prove or disprove is the idea of the bubble universes. So the bubble universes idea, they're trying to find scars of early collisions with other bubble universes. And in some ways, the hardest to prove is the many worlds, because there you have this seamless division of reality. So you have to find a way to make predictions in advance and kind of feel assured that you get the right results. But it seems a little unclear how to directly test it. I mean, one thing that might be the case for that is the fact is that quantum measurement theory doesn't quite have the answer as to why the state collapses into one possibility. So basically, until every other theory is ruled out, you can't really say. You have to be kind of neutral and say, well, many worlds seems to work, but these other ideas don't work. Like kind of in a negative way, saying, well, we don't really have a solution. Like the idea now of human beings saying, okay, I'm going to do an electron position experiment. And by thinking that and doing it, all of a sudden the collapse happens. That, I mean, most serious people in quantum measurement theory don't really see that as an option anymore. But they might say, okay, maybe there's some interaction with the environment. And if we can eventually perfect the idea that maybe interaction with the environment will collapse the wave function or quantum state down to one possibility very, very quickly in a way that we can't really see this blend, then people would probably turn to that theory and abandon many worlds. If that makes sense.
But in another universe, it's totally clear.
So, do you want to stop here or?
Yeah, I guess so. That was absolutely fantastic. I think you can tell. And where do you want to do your?
I'll have a table there.
Oh, okay, right over there, right.
Yeah, and I guess I'll get I don't know if we have a pen.
Have a
And
visual.
as it, yeah.
They have machines that.
Oh, thank you. So
Okay.
anyone wants one, $30, signed copy. Limited supply.
It's gotta be.
Okay, I guess we'll say goodbye to all of you on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the meeting. Bye-bye.